Dr. Christy Zigler comes to us from Duke University School of Medicine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Allison. You really set me up nicely for my talk. So I'm really excited to be here on behalf of my team, on behalf of our collaborators, to talk with you all about the Orca Measure. So Orca stands for Observer Reported Communication Ability Measure, and at its core, it is a survey that was developed for this community and in close collaboration with this community. So today, in the short time that I have available, I'm going to be talking to you about the road to the Orca Measure, where we started, where we are now, with a specific eye to the role of FAST, the role of ABOM, and also the support of this community. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what we're working on now with an eye to the future, and then I'm going to wrap it up with a couple slides that I really hope to speak to the impact that your support has had, both on the Angelman syndrome research community, but also even broader. Disclosures. It's important to note that the views expressed today are my own and don't necessarily represent those of our funders or my employer. It also is important to note that the study team, including me, has interest in the technology that we're going to be talking about today, and if it's commercially successful in the future, we may benefit financially. I'm also going to be talking about a number of projects today, and you see the wonderful list here of our funders, with FAST being top of the list. And that's really where the story of the Orca starts, is with FAST and the thought leaders in this community. And Allison already talked a little bit about how this project really came into being. And so looking ahead to the exciting clinical trials and knowing that communication ability is a real priority for families, how are we going to measure that in a meaningful, sensitive way so that we can evaluate treatment benefit, right? So looking at the end of the road, what is that measure going to look like? So FAST reached out to the Center for Health Measurement, which is my group at Duke University, and really started this car rolling down this road of outcome measure development. So the first step was really to see what was out there, strengths and limitations of existing measures, and there was really strong justification for creating something new, something specific to Angelman syndrome, something that really centered your experiences as parents of your children. And so the next step was really to sit down with members of the community, and that was really facilitated by FAST and by ABOM. So we did qualitative interviews with 22 families and 6 clinical experts like speech and language pathologists that work with your kids. We took all of that rich, detailed information and we started writing survey questions using the language, how you all think about communicating with your children, what you notice, what your children's strengths are. Then we took the survey and we pilot tested it with 12 families, and we made modifications based on that feedback, and then we tested it again to make sure that those modifications were working well. Then at the end of that, we did what's known as a psychometric evaluation. Basically, we administered the survey using an electronic platform, and we had 249 families who gave us complete data that we could use for analysis. So at the end of this, what did we end up with? So we have the Orca Measure as it currently stands today, and also as importantly, we have documented support for the Orca Measure for use with an eye to clinical trials. And so this documentation is really, really important for stakeholders, regulatory bodies like the FDA, the EMA, as well as pharmaceutical companies who need to make a strong justification that a measure is fit for purpose for clinical trials. So before I jump into what we're currently working on in next steps, I wanted to spend a little bit more time with one of the limitations that we really wanted to limit or avoid when we were developing the Orca Measure. And so you can see here something called a floor effect that Allison had already talked about a little bit before. So this is not work from my group. This is work from a really wonderful paper that was published in 2021. You'll recognize some of the author names here. And so the figures here represent scores on the Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scale. Now, you'll notice this is Vineland 2, so there's been an updated version, but this is a really nice example of a floor effect. So the red dots and the blue dots and the lines, those represent scores from individuals with Angelman syndrome. And if you draw your attention to the rectangle on the right-hand side, these are expressive language scores. And this space between where the blue and the red dots are falling and the gray line. So the gray line is really the midpoint or sort of the the average score within the general population or the normative group. And so a floor effect, you can see here, there's a lot of space between where the blue and red dots are and that line. And this means that we're only using a tiny bit of the total possible score range. And this can be problematic for really two reasons. The first is this makes it really hard to compare between children. It also makes it really hard to see change, right? If everybody's getting the same score, if your child's gaining skills, this might mask that. So I saw this was on one of Allison's slides too. You probably have seen this presented at past meetings. I love this slide. As a psychometrician, this is exactly what I love to see. So if we were going to expect floor effects here, or ceiling effects, we would see sort of a back up at one of the ends of the scale. So the blue bars here really represent the percent of individuals in that original calibration sample of 249 who have score ranges within those like little tiny lines. And what we see here, let's see if I can use this. You see this really nice bell shape. So we have lots of folks in the middle, and as scores get more extreme, we have less folks at the tails. Even more excitingly, we had only 3 individuals who had the lowest possible score on the Orca measure, and nobody who was at the highest possible score. So this to me is support number 1, that the content that we're asking you all about on the Orca is really well aligned with the behaviors you see in your kids. It also means that there's space within the score range that we could theoretically see change no matter where your child is falling on the score range. So that's a really wonderful sign for the Orca measure. All right, next steps. We are continuously working, supported by FAST and collaborations through the ABOM, to utilize existing sources of data to answer the questions that you see here. So how does the Orca complement information that we're getting from clinicians about communication ability? How responsive are scores to real meaningful changes in communication? And then how do we interpret score changes within a clinical trial? And so we presented some of this data for question number 1 yesterday at the ABOM meeting, and we have plans to get access to data within the next few months and the next year for questions 2 and 3. All right, so my final 2 slides are really to show the impact that your support has had on this project and the larger Orca initiative. And to mix my imagery here with the car, FAST is really the ground that all of this work has really stood on, and your support and the thought leaders in your community. And so through your support for our Center for Health Measurement, we have continued collaborations where we're working with Boston Children's Hospital and the Angelman Syndrome Natural History Study to answer some of those questions I showed on the last slide. And the work that we've done in your community has also resulted in similar projects. We just actually finished one that was supported by the Rett Syndrome Research Trust, where we were looking to see how well the Orca measure did for their kids. And in addition, Allison already talked about this as well, we received a multi-year study from the FDA, where we're partnering with Combined Brain, where we're looking to improve the measurement of communication ability for clinical trials for 12 other rare and ultra-rare neurodevelopmental disorders. So not only did FAST recognize the need for this car, gas the car up, and set us on the road down toward the finish line, you've also allowed other organizations, other community members to start their cars a little closer to the finish line. And the finish line in this case is that this measure is deemed fit for purpose as an outcome within clinical trials. All right, my last slide, Orca by the numbers. I think this really nicely speaks to impact. So we had just about 300 families from this community provide input into the original development of the Orca. So this is really, I see this as your measure. The Orca is currently available in 16 languages. And we've worked with a certified translation company to follow a really rigorous process. And through that process, they've conducted an estimated 160 qualitative interviews with international families in the Angelman syndrome community. Right now at our last count, we've had 38 executed licenses for the Orca measure. So this means there's 38 different organizations, academic, industry, nonprofits, clinicians who are using or plan to use the Orca in their research. And that is associated with 32,000 conducted or planned administrations of the Orca Measure, with almost 4,000 of those being with your kids. And then finally, the Orca is being used with over 20 different neurodevelopmental disorders and diagnoses. And although I always caution folks when they want to use it with a new target population, we are working with as many partners as we can to help support their use of the Orca Measure in their populations as well. So thank you so much on behalf of my team. Thank you to my team. Thank you to our collaborators, our funders, our partners, and the biggest thank you to FAST, to ABOM, and to this community. I'm so grateful to be a part of this project. Thank you.